in some cases, some people need the extreme act of being put on television and being forced to confront this very scary truth and reality, which is that the person they're in love with is lying to them, and that does take a lot of courage. But I think it's a trade that they know they have to make, because they've up until now been so cowardly and unable to sort of stand up for themselves that they hadn't done it.
This week on the Courageous Podcast, we had Schulman, known really from Catfish, but also recently on Dancing with the Stars. And in Berman, you actually have a pretty interesting story of how you know Neve that you cover in the podcast.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where I remember, so my wife and I got married a decade ago, and the same time when his documentary, the documentary Catfish, came out, and I remembered how we actually met, which we'll go into detail in the show, was literally the first and only time we've met was at my wedding, which is crazy if you think about that. But I remember that about half the people at the wedding had seen the documentary and half hadn't. And I was really grateful that I was in the group that hadn't seen it, honestly, because I just wanted to appreciate him for the person he was before I was stained by the art in the movie and the big screen. And it wasn't until well after obviously us getting married, Randy and I getting married, that I went to look at his work and was like, wow, this is an amazing, cool story. Better to know the guy, and I think that's sort of the point of this whole story is I think we got to know the guy, and I thought he was so open and not afraid to admit who he was, what he's all about. It was super refreshing.
Yeah, I think you build up some version in your head of who people are, and so when we get a chance to just talk and dig a little bit, and he's honest and truthful, and really I was surprised by some of the answers that he shared with us, and so take a listen and you can learn a little bit more about what drove him to do what he's doing. And
he's still driven, and he's still driven, and you can see it's still in him. I think when Hollywood paints you as something, it's really hard to pivot out of that. And so it's nice that he now has this sort of pivot to Dancing with the Stars. And I'm really curious to see and hear where this takes him. And we talk a little bit about that on the episode. Neve Schulman.
Hey, what's up?
What's up? It's been a bit. It's been a little bit since we saw each other last.
Yeah, a long time. It was your wedding, I think, right?
Yeah, so this is Ryan, I don't know if you know this story. This is a true story. So the absolute first time I met Neve was
the first and only time.
That's true too. Yeah, it was. Well, that's cool though if you think about it, because that's a decade ago. It's now officially 10 years ago. Yeah,
that's right.
And we met the night before my wedding, and when you showed up, you weren't in great shape. You were in good shape, but you looked like a madman. You were on talk a little bit about that motorcycle trip.
That's right. So I had the year prior. What year did you get married? 2010 or 11?
11.
2011, right? Because in 2010, I purchased what was for me at the time my first new motor vehicle. It was a 2010 BMW motorcycle, like an adventure bike. And that year, I had then planned with some friends to ride down to Cabo to sort of do the Baja 1000, if you will. And we'd gone to do it. And then at the time there was some concerns over safety in Mexico and gang violence and whatnot. So I didn't care, but one of the other guys on the trip had kids and he just didn't think it was worth it. And we all kind of understood. So we didn't do it. But two of us who had wanted to go decided the following year that we would do it. And so I met with my friend John and our friend Van, who obviously knows Ryan. And we started in LA and we rode our motorcycles across the border and all the way down the Baja Peninsula and ended in Cabo. And part of the sort of excuse for doing it and the timing of it was that you were getting married and that Van had been invited to the wedding, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. And by the way, the funny part on this side is that Van is, I think, didn't in New York City, you guys shared a studio, or pretty much was right next
Yeah,
to
next door. Yeah.
to the Neistat brothers. So
Right.
so at this point, every time I was in California, every time I would go back to New York, Van and I had a ritual. The ritual was I would take him to the Soho Grand for a burger that he would douse in ketchup, and then he would walk by your studio and be like, "You would love those guys. They're doing really cool shit," and that was it. And if I would have sent a normal invitation to Van, he wouldn't have come to the wedding. So it had to have been a Van-esque invitation, which is like, "Hey, do you want to come to Mexico, to Cabo, to the wedding?" And his response was only, he's like, "Yes, but here's what I want to do, the trip. And do you mind if I bring 2 buddies?" Now, could you imagine, Thompson, for like 1 second having that conversation with your wife? Like,
but to be fair, we weren't really guests at the wedding. We just sort of crashed the party, right?
We know enough about Van Neistat now that you were guests at the wedding. We knew what we signed up for with Van.
Right.
And to this day, I got to tell you, there's still people who were at the wedding that were like, those party starters that you guys hired, those people were amazing. Now, let me give you some props before Thompson, I throw it over to you. I think the world now knows you as a producer. They know you as an actor. I think as of this last few months, they now know you as a contemporary dancer, which was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
What they don't know you as, that I know you as, is a photographer.
Yeah, I don't know that it's fair to say that I'm a photographer anymore, or that I was ever really a photographer. I don't know. I mean, when I think of a photographer, I think of someone who, well, yes, I was at one point. I like to think of myself more as sort of a photojournalist at the time. I was inspired by a community of people, actually primarily dancers, and for 5 years sort of was obsessed with photographing them in their kind of natural environment. And then when I stopped sort of living and breathing the world of dance, my photography kind of went away, which was fine. And I moved on and started doing other stuff.
Well, we have beautiful pictures of our wedding from you. And I remember you being like, "Do you mind if I shoot the wedding?" I was like,
did I take pictures? Wow, I don't even remember.
Oh, I will send them back to you. The gorgeous black and white pictures from all different angles. And the irony here is, so we got married 5/7/11, so we're coming on 10 years. And I'm pretty sure this is the 10th year of the anniversary of Catfish as well, correct?
Right, that's right. The documentary came out September of 2010. So we just had our 10-year anniversary, yeah.
Does it feel like it's been 10 years or 1 second or 50 years?
I think that time of my life feels like far away. So I guess it does feel like 10 years ago.
So, okay, 10 years ago, put yourself back there for a moment. I refreshed my memory and pulled it up on Netflix. And at what point did you decide, and what was the burning desire to say, let's pick up a camera and start documenting this whole thing? Because the story goes through these ups and downs, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And what gave you that idea?
So it never occurred to me to film any of it, nor did I necessarily have the desire to have it filmed. Primarily because of the simple fact that I shared a studio with my brother and his business partner, Henry, who are both filmmakers. There was this unavoidable interest that they had in what was taking place in my life, because, we were all sitting around. I was getting these funny emails from this young girl, and reading them to the guys, and then packages were arriving. And 2007 was sort of one of the early years when, especially for filmmakers, like real HD video, handheld video cameras became available. Like that was when the point and shoot started really recording high quality video. And so sort of very casually, and certainly without any meaningful concept, my brother or Henry would just film me while I read an email here and there, or when a package would arrive with paintings in it. And it was always just kind of downloaded and stored in a hard drive under the folder of sort of Neve's weird internet friends. But never with any expectations that it would turn into anything other than maybe like clips for a montage that they would show at the wedding if and when I eventually met this girl and maybe, it worked out, right? And it really, and I never really, I thought it was cute that they were capturing it, but again, there was no vision of a product. It was just, Neve's doing something weird and something's happening that's interesting. Let's just capture it just in case. And it stayed that way for the better part of, I think, the 8 months that we were talking, until we happened to be on a project together in Colorado. We had all our equipment with us, and we discovered that this one little thing that they told us wasn't true. And then we started digging, and we started finding that more things weren't true. And that's when they looked at each other and said, ooh, we should see how far this goes. We should film this and maybe make something of it, which was at the same time that I said, well, I don't want to do that now, obviously, because I'm not feeling so hot about this. So that's in the movie, but that's kind of how it unfolded, very, very casually and without any real expectations.
So obviously we're going to talk a little bit about courage. There's some courage just to put yourself out there in that way, to go visit this person. And you've helped a lot of other people kind of find that. And I think, I was just reading some interviews that you've done, and you talk about compassion, and we see that in the show on MTV and in the documentary. And I'm curious, where does that come from? Is it a thing that you learned growing up? Is it from your family? A lot
Are we talking about courage or compassion?
No. So I think they're one and the same, right? So like, you have the courage to have compassion and
interesting.
And to share that, with a lot of the other guests and people that have come on the show. So sure. I'm just wondering, like, where does that come from? Because in watching a lot of these, episodes and the show, I would think, anger is like the first emotion that's covering up some sort of hurt. But, to be compassionate and to really like dig and try and understand from the other side is not easy to do. And just curious on where that came from.
Well, I'll say that I don't consider myself the most empathetic person. I think it's an emotion or an ability that I've never felt came naturally to me. I would say, if I'm being perfectly honest, that most of my actions are motivated by selfishness. And now I don't know if that's necessarily true for everyone, and we all just sort of, we filter that selfishness in different ways. So you say it was courageous of me to go there. I would disagree. I would say that it was a combination of impulsive, not a little naive, a bit irresponsible, but mostly just selfish because it was fun. It was a trip with my brother and Henry that I knew would yield some sort of excitement for me. And obviously I wanted to meet the people I'd been talking to, but again, that was, because I wanted to meet them. And I think maybe my New York City upbringing has somewhat conditioned me to be headstrong and impulsive and to sort of say yes to things and not hesitate, because there's very little room and time for hesitation as a New Yorker. You just sort of do it, make a decision. If you're going to cross the street, don't fucking think about it. You're crossing the street because you only got a window of 7 feet between the rear bumper of that car and the front bumper of that. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. And if you see me ride my bicycle around New York or my motorcycle or even my car, most people would like have a heart attack, but I've figured out a way to make the most of every possible moment and space. And that's my operating system, is just like absolute efficiency to the point of hazard. So I don't give myself any credit for being courageous. Plus I had my friends with me. It was easy. And then I would say my ability, if you want to call it that, or simply my reaction to the situation, which I get a lot of credit for being compassionate in that moment. I would go so far as to say it was mostly just shock. I think I'd never come face to face with a person whose life was so different than mine, whose experience was so almost incomprehensibly difficult. I'm very privileged, very lucky the way I grew up, and I've always had second chances. I've always had the support and love of my family, and I've never, sacrificed my dreams to become the primary caregiver for two handicapped children from my husband. Like, what she's done and her experience in life is so different than mine that it was immediately just like iced me, nothing I could think or do or say, it all paled in comparison to what this woman's experience was. And then I just got so lucky because, well, sure, other people might have reacted differently and would not have been as even just generous with listening to her. The combination of me and my brother and Henry wanting to make her feel comfortable so that she would open up, giving her that opportunity to do that, having her do that, and then the documentary coming out, the world was introduced to me through this very specific moment in my life, which had come as a result of a million different factors, many of which were out of my control. And all of a sudden presented Neve, this sweet, compassionate guy who, had this experience and handled it so well and is this courageous, whatever. So I got reinvented as a 27-year-old by that experience and that film of the experience in a way that I had never anticipated or planned for or could have predicted. And now I've had to sort of back into that, and I had to learn how to actually be a more compassionate, understanding, and empathetic person, because that's what people thought I was.
Fascinating.
So, yeah.
By the way, do you see like that? Like, I mean, by the way, you've only been doing Catfish now for basically 8 years. 8 years.
Yeah, right.
So like, do you see this with like, as you see people go through the same journey that you've gone through? I'm sure they have their own contextual part of it, but like,
right.
Do you see them reinventing themselves? Are they angry? Are they compassionate? Like, what are the themes that you're seeing? You
mean like the other people who come through the show and I don't know. That's tough because I spend very little time with them. I do think, or I should say, I know, because if you're saying something, you should just know it. I hate that everyone says, I think, or I don't know at the beginning or end of everything they say. Because if you're saying something, you should just make a decision that it's what you're saying and say it. So I have seen, without a doubt, that the most meaningful takeaway for the people who come on the show, both sides, the hopeful, as we call them, or the catfish, is the relatively small amount of time that we spend with them asking them questions. Because no one, for the most part, in many of these people's lives, has ever asked them a question about themselves. Ever. Which sounds impossible. And yet the experience for most young people around the world, I'm willing to say, is that they feel as though no one understands them at all. No one's ever taken a moment to really focus on them and their thoughts and their feelings and their desires, and certainly never engaged them in a conversation that was one-sided in the way that we say, so how do you feel about this? And then wait and let them actually express themselves. Because normally in a conversation, it moves so quickly and no one wants that awkward silence. And so you fill the space and time with new questions, or you end up sidetracked and just talking about things that you can relate on, because it's awkward to just ask someone a question and then wait for an answer. So that, I think everybody who comes on the show ends up changed in some small way because they feel as though they've been seen and heard and had to actually think about themselves for the first time in many cases.
Yeah, it's like some self-actualization actually happens, because it's not easy to actually do that. I mean, you have to spend time.
It's not easy, yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, this is just like a burning question for me, is how do you get people to agree to actually go on camera and do this? It seems extremely embarrassing to me, and I'm just always mesmerized at like the ability for you and other shows to get people to agree to do this?
Sure. That's a great question. So one of the things that has allowed me to maintain both my interest and commitment to the show is that I'm completely uninvolved in the process all the way up until that first moment when we start filming and I read that email and I have no idea what the story is, who it's coming from, where we're going or not going, whatever. I know nothing, which allows me to react authentically and makes it interesting. And that's the show. And then I can do the investigation and I can really feel like I'm actually doing something. But there is an incredible team of people who run our, casting department, who go through emails and applications and direct messages and vet the stories and obviously connect with the people and make sure that they're not totally out of their minds and that they're serious about this and that it means something to them. And I ask them all the time, how do you get these people to do, like, who in their right mind would feel strongly enough about a relationship that they need to reach out to the television show, which is all about revealing that the relationship you're in isn't real. Like, if you're going to end up on Catfish, it's because you're not talking to the, so why would you want to share that experience? The answer, to the best of my knowledge, is a few things. Primarily that they desperately need to know the truth and that this is their last resort and probably their only option. They've exhausted whatever other potential avenues they feel like they could have taken. And they really, really do care that much and need to know that badly. Second to that, I think, is that it's a continuation of this idea that I have something happening in my life. No one cares about me in my life, but maybe if I go on this show and I'll have an opportunity to tell my story, to be seen, and to have the sort of spotlight for 15 minutes, if you want to use the sort of terminology. And then thirdly, I think, the show pays a little bit of money. And so I think people know, like, if they're on the fence and they're unemployed and they're looking at the difference between $1,000 or $1,500, whatever it is, or not, like, that's meaningful. Well,
I like number one the most. I mean, like this sort of peace of mind, right? That things are so, I have to know. And
right. Everyone says they need closure. That's like the word that everyone uses.
So for 3,000 days, you've been catfishing away now, which is amazing. Sorry to put it like that, right? But like for 3,000, you've been doing it, and I know it's going
3,600. Let's call it what it is.
Okay, so it's 10.
Oh, you took off the 2 years. Oh,
yeah, I just did the 8 years. I did the 8 years. So like,
smart.
But like, so welcome to this new pivot, though.
Did you do that on a calculator or in your head?
I did it on a calculator. But while we were in that's not me.
So that's what you're doing while I was talking. Got it.
Yes, I was like, oh, how many days actually is that? I'm like, can I pretend like I'm paying attention and get the calculator out? So I want to commend you on your rock star performance on Dancing with the Stars, and you actually look like you had a lot of fun.
It's okay.
Right?
Yeah. So, oh my God, it did.
So what was that like? Like, and like, talk me through how this shows up on your lap. How do they find out, oh, Neve can dance? Like, what is this like?
I remember, I think early on in my Catfish TV career, my agent at the time was at CAA, and I don't remember how it came to be, but obviously my life pre-Catfish, which was very much in the world of dance, had spilled over a little bit, and it's mentioned in the documentary. And so I think she had brought it up at one point, like, oh, you should do Dancing with the Stars. I know the casting person. And at the time I was so busy and wrapped up in making Catfish that it didn't make sense scheduling wise. So it kind of got shelved. But I think that sort of put the idea in my head back in probably 2012 or 13. But then for the last 8 years, I've not really been able to do it because Catfish films pretty much throughout the year. And while we have weeks off here and there, and where we take these little breaks, the schedule really is always in flux. If the story comes in and it gets cleared, we go. And so I never get more than like 5 or 10 days notice before we're filming. And then oftentimes I'll think we're going to go film and that episode gets canceled because someone decides they don't want to do it, which means that I can't commit to being in LA for 12 weeks every Sunday and Monday and rehearse. Like, it just wouldn't have worked. So coincidentally, this year, I've got a new agent now, and I don't know, again, what piece is all kind of connected, but so I had told her that I mentioned very casually, like, yeah, I'd love to do Dancing with the Stars. And so she called her friend who works who's the casting director for the show and said, you should put Neve on this season. And because I was in LA for quarantine and we were filming episodes remotely, it meant that I could do it because I was in LA with no, end in sight. Anyway, so I did a pre-interview. I told them my crazy story about how much I love dance. She loved me. But as you can imagine, there are a million factors that go into choosing who's on a season of the show. And obviously there's a balance that they have to strike with all the different contestants for every sort of demographic, race, age thing, gender, sexuality, the whole thing. So I didn't hear back from them all summer. And I knew that the show was going to start in September. So by Labor Day, I was like, okay, this isn't happening, obviously. And so I was already back in New York. I planned on staying here all through the fall. And then on like September 6th or something, I literally just woke up to a voicemail or a text from my agent that said, you're in, they want you. They need to announce the cast tomorrow live on Good Morning America. Can you do it?
Oh, wow.
So I of course said yes. My wife and I figured it out quickly. We rushed back to the city. They wanted me to fly like the next day. I told them I couldn't till at least 3 or 4 days later. I had to get my family back in New York and settled. And then I went, and obviously I immediately became one of the best decisions and most important experiences of my life, because it was something that I'd been just sort of working towards in a weird way and building up towards for so many years, and just felt great to finally kind of close the chapter in a weird way and potentially open a new chapter on my love and passion for dance.
Yeah, again, I think we always talk about courage with being about change and reinvention, and it does.
Yeah.
It allowed you to show your versatility, and I imagine it's got to be difficult to pivot in Hollywood. Like, once you're something, that's what you are. Until you're not, and now you're not.
No, it's true. I mean, because I've pitched a lot of other shows over the years. I love motorcycles and cars, and I tried to make a show with Van actually, and his other brother Dean. We wanted to make a show about finding, driveway or garage projects that have been sitting for years that have a lot of sentimental value, but for one reason or another never got done, and helping people like finish those jobs, get those cars or motorcycles back on the road. But I'm not a car guy as far as people know me. So couldn't sell that. I'm trying to pitch this other game show. Right? Like, it's very true. People see you a certain way. That's what they want you for. But I have to say, this experience of Dancing with the Stars really did, for the first time, I think, break down whatever sort of clear cellophane wrap people had put me in with my Catfish box, figurine character. And it's like, oh, now you can take him out of the box and he can actually move and dance. And it's already sort of yielding some interesting new ideas and opportunities. So that's been great.
Yeah, I think Broadway, New York. Not that you're trying to get back to New York, or maybe you are.
No, I'm in New York. I'm back. I love it here. This is where I live. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I got to ask one other thing real quick, because obviously you're close. I'm assuming you're close with Jenna Johnson, because that's your part of this. But like, was there anyone else on the show that you ended up bonding with? And of course, I've got my Carol Baskin. Like, come on, like, tell me, her in Circle of Life in a lion outfit. That is.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any real interaction with Carol aside from her being very lovely and supportive. And weirdly, now I think she follows me on Twitter and likes my tweets. Yeah, I mean, obviously Jen's husband, Val, who's also on the show, is fantastic, and we become friends. And them as a couple are fantastic. I love them. But also I would say probably of all the other people on the show, I became friendliest with Nelly, weirdly. Nice. He's just a really charming guy and funny, and yeah, love that guy.
So the new season is completely virtual, right?
Yeah.
All done through, is it done through Zoom? Is that how you guys
do it?
Zoom.
Yeah.
And so the pandemic's obviously changed how everyone's had to communicate and connect. And I think, so many people have had to learn kind of these digital mediums that maybe they hadn't been exposed to as much previously. And, you talked a little bit about seeking the truth and how that could be a driver for some of the reasons people, want to come on the show and do this. But I'm curious, when you go and meet these people in person, you can read body language and, you can kind of feel the room and feel the emotion. And is that different now? And also when you have the two guests meeting each other digitally, I mean, is this just going to, it's been a way of life, right? I mean, this is how you got the show anyways, online dating and communication. And we have this whole generation that is completely digital savvy, right? I have a young kid. I know you have young kids, and
oh my God.
My daughter knows how to use my phone better than I do. Right. Yeah. But I'm just curious, over the last 8 years, and now being in the space you're in now, how much has changed between the interactions, and what are you seeing? And
sure. Right. I'm going to answer. You put a lot of questions in one question, man. You got to work on just focusing. I'm going to start with the first thing that came to my mind as you were talking, and then I'll get answers to the other thing. So you said people are seeking the truth. And when you said that, for some reason, I heard it, obviously, and I thought about it, and I disagree, not with you, but I think more perhaps accurately, it triggered a new realization for me, which is that I don't think people come on the show seeking the truth. I think they know deep down what's happening, and they selfishly, because I think everything kind of comes back to selfishness, selfishly need a release. They need this experience to finally free themselves from this relationship that they know isn't good for them, and that they know isn't leading in the direction they want it to, and that they're wasting their time and their energy, and it's hurting them. And the only way they can really free themselves from it often is to, in some cases, some people need the extreme act of being put on television and being forced to confront this very scary truth and reality, which is that the person they're in love with is lying to them. And that does take a lot of courage. But I think it's a trade that they know they have to make, because they've up until now been so cowardly and unable to sort of stand up for themselves that they hadn't done it. Then I'll answer your other question about technology and this generation. And this is something I've actually sort of been thinking about, and I think piecing together more recently, which is that everybody, I think our age and younger, but even older, has now in the last 10 years become so public, right? Everything about our lives has become incredibly easy to access and share, and there's very little privacy in the world anymore. And while on one hand, that technology should make it much easier to communicate and validate those with whom you're talking, I think it's also pushed people towards needing something that is not public, desperately looking for a tiny little pocket of life that they can escape into, that doesn't show up on anyone's news feed, that doesn't know or talk to any of their friends, that doesn't exist even really online. It's just, it's obviously their phone, but it's just this text. It's this unbelievably basic form of just human connection that in a way really escapes all technology, right? So we're not FaceTiming, we're not on social media. It's just either phone calls or texts. It's very, very basic human interaction, right? And I think people get so turned on and excited by that because we're so used to sort of just blandly sharing our mundane everyday experience and then comparing it to everybody else's and realizing that our lives are boring. And then all of a sudden we have this opportunity to have this one secret, special little like uncut gem of a thing that only we know and have and don't share with anyone. It just feels very exciting and valuable to us. So I think that's why people are moving maybe even more and more towards these types of relationships, and that much more vulnerable to the emotional connection that they feel when they're just talking to someone and they're not seeing them and they don't have to show themselves and it's not for anybody else and they don't even tell their friends or family. It's just this super special, just for you thing.
Well, I like the last part of that. Like where I was going when you're saying that, to be honest, and I know we got to let you go here in a minute, but like, I actually wonder, like, this will be the courageous thing that I say. Like your life is so, you have no choice but to share your life because of what you do. Like I mean, I can't even imagine, are you being followed? You know, people are putting pictures of you in magazines or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually think if we would spend more time figuring out who the heck each of us were. And it goes back to the selfish comment. Like, I do think selfish gets a bad rap, but what if selfish is nothing more than like, you have total clarity of what you like. And I definitely am on record saying like being courageous actually in the long run makes you happier because you address that thing. And if you go through it, right. It does for you. So, you know, I need another hour to spout on this stuff, but like in the spirit of like not doing that, if you're going to sum Neve up in 3 words, what are the 3 words you would use to describe you, to the real Neve? Here we go.
3 words to describe me. All right. So I think for me, 3 words to describe me. I would, though I don't like to say it, I think I would say selfish. Is one. I think, I don't know if it's a word or sort of a phrase or if there's a word but hard on myself, if that, you know, counts. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of a word that would describe this idea of like how I wish I could be more emotional. I don't want to say that I'm emotionless, but I'd like to be more in touch with my feelings.
We really are going to need another hour.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, and we'll wrap it up here in a second, but has, you know, having a family and kids changed any of that for you? Do you feel less selfish now, or is that still like, why do you think you're so selfish?
No. I wish I had a different answer for you, but I feel like the experience of having kids is something that a lot of people expect, and in many cases probably does change your life and mm-hmm. totally changes your priorities. And didn't have that experience. I love having a family, and I'm so happy that I do, because I need something to work for. I need motivation. I need a reason and a goal and a destination. Like when training, I would never have been a runner, but I decided I was going to run a marathon under a certain amount of time. And so like for 4.5 years, like I did that. So now I have this new reason that I need to work hard and I need to, you know, achieve and accomplish and buy the things and afford the lifestyle that I want my kids to have. But it all still sort of, I think, stems from, and I don't know, I hope this interview is not going to get turned into like an article that Nev Schulman's the most selfish guy in the world, but like selfishly, like I want to win, you know, like I want to do things that make me happy and make me feel good. And having a family is one of those things. And, you know, being successful is another one of those things. And the hardest part for me is that like, I want to feel that. Like, I know that I felt something very special when I met and fell in love with my wife. And that's like that was one of the biggest, most important feelings that I'd ever had, where I knew something had like opened and unlocked in my heart in a way that I hadn't felt before. And obviously I feel a version of that for my kids. But part of what makes me me, and I think makes me successful, is this sort of weird tunnel vision focus that I have for the things that I like, that I focus on, whatever they are. And I haven't figured out, and I think this might be for a lack of courage, but I haven't really figured out how to direct my life more towards those things, because it means taking big risks and giving up a lot of what I've sort of assumed is the stuff I should care about and have and work for. Because I've heard myself for 20 years now talk about how all I really want is to, like, you know, live on a ranch somewhere and get dirty every day and build fences and like ride dirt bikes. Is that really the life I want? Could that just be a weekend summer thing? I don't know. I'm confused. You know, I think we're all kind of uncertain about, and maybe I need more courage. I don't know. But you know, you have a good thing and you just kind of tend to want to let it keep going and not fuck with it.
I think that's fair. I would say it's not like the minute, like, first of all, I can just only speak for myself. And then here's the question that we'll have you wrap on, just so you know, is like, if you were gonna, I mean, where I was going to go is what's next, but I kind of feel like you already shared a little bit of what's next, but if there is a what's next, but I could tell you for me, I was most scared when I left my last company, which I would call my last life, a year before I left, because I knew I was leaving and I was afraid and I was leaving all my safety, but I was really clear, like the fact, to me, there's no end anymore. Like, what lights me up is hearing stories like yours and other people's. And if I could do that for the rest of my time here, that's kind of winning for me. Does that mean the bar's low? I don't know. It's like, I like telling people's story of reinvention. And I don't see, if everybody knows you as the Catfish guy, now they don't. Like, that is reinvention. That is a pivot.
No, totally. I think what I'm more focused or just sort of angled towards is deciding to start a family. Obviously becomes, for most people, like the best and biggest decision, but also the biggest sacrifice you make, because all of a sudden you're not just deciding for yourself. Every decision you make affects other people. And I haven't figured out yet what, if any, decision I make for myself is good for my, learning how to make that decision and that balance is scary and tough. And obviously you hope that you have a partner who trusts you and wants the same things you want, but like, it's
still tough.
Yeah.
Now this is the best way to end it. And it's always easier to step in someone else's shoes. So if you're going to give the listener, I mean, if someone's listening to the Courageous podcast, that already says something about them. So you're going to give advice to them. What advice are you giving them?
Advice for someone listening. I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is it doesn't have to be perfect. Because that's always the biggest hang up for me is, I'd love to do that, but I know I'm probably never going to do it as well as I'd like to. So what's the point? And then you end up just not doing things that you should be doing and enjoying, or even if you do it and you end up sucking and it's a failure, like, better to have done that than not. And that's something that I'm like, that's why for me, getting second place in Dancing with the Stars was such a wonderfully poignant and I think appropriate finish, because I've always been so competitive and such a perfectionist. If you had told me I wasn't going to win, I don't know what I would have said. But I had such a great time, and the experience was such a win in so many other ways that the silliness of the trophy doesn't matter. So anyway, so that's the awesome message I guess I'd give.
Great way to end. I appreciate your time, man. It's great to see you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah,
let's do this again.
And I've got a podcast now. I've got a Catfish the podcast. So if you're listening and you love me and podcasts, check that out.
Where do we find that?
Anywhere podcasts are downloaded.
All right, there you have it, everybody. Neve, thanks. I know you went way over the time we had.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Great to see you, man. Take care.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us 5 stars, subscribe, and leave us a comment.